All right, so let's jump right into this situation that's brewing over in South Asia.
Hmm.
One that could really end up, you know, reshaping the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah.
You're talking about Bangladesh and some of the moves they've been making on the world stage,
Right.
almost like a game of Risk.
Yes.
Alliances shifting, everyone trying to position themselves, for a better spot.
What's so fascinating here is how Bangladesh is really, trying to break out from what's traditionally India's sphere of influence.
Right.
And they're doing that by partnering up with some pretty interesting players,
Yeah.
particularly Turkey.
Yeah, we've seen some headlines, about Bangladesh and Turkey becoming BFFs.
Hmm.
But what's actually going on?
Right.
Our sources point to some pretty serious moves by Bangladesh to secure investment and technology,
Yeah.
especially for their defense industry.
Yes.
They're looking to level up, and it seems like they see Turkey as like a key partner in making that happen.
That's right. And it's not just vague talk about, cooperation.
Right.
Bangladesh's chief advisor, Mohammed Yunus, made a very direct appeal to Turkey's trade minister, Mehmet Mush.
Okay.
He basically said, look, you guys are leading the way in technology, especially defense tech.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build something together.
That's pretty bold.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to seek partnerships, but it's another to just openly invite a country to, like, essentially set up shop in your backyard.
Right.
Especially when we're talking about defense.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, if you kind of read between the lines, this seems to be part of a larger strategy by Bangladesh to diversify its, alliances,
Right.
reduce its reliance on India.
Okay.
They're sending a clear message that they're not content to be in anybody's shadow,
Mhm.
and they're ready to play a more assertive role in the region.
So it's more than just getting some cool new tech.
Yes.
This is about Bangladesh really carving out a space for itself.
Exactly. It's about projecting power and independence. And they're not limiting themselves to just defense either.
Right.
They're looking at a range of different sectors to expand ties with Turkey.
So beyond tanks and drones, what else are they looking at?
Ah.
Our sources mention healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and even farm machinery.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just like a laundry list of potential collaborations, or is there a bigger economic picture here, a bigger strategy?
It's definitely strategic.
Okay.
The Turkish trade minister even hinted at the possibility of replacing India as a major supplier to Bangladesh.
Wow.
Now, whether or not that's a realistic goal is debatable.
Right.
But it certainly highlights the ambition behind this partnership.
Replacing India, that's a bold statement considering how intertwined those economies already are,
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't fully replace India. Shifting significantly toward Turkish imports would send a pretty strong message, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. It would signal a real realignment of economic priorities.
Yeah.
And a willingness to kind of shake things up in the region.
Yeah.
And for those, following closely, particularly those preparing for the UPSC exams in India,
Mm-hmm.
this is a development worth analyzing.
For our listeners who might not be familiar, the UPSC is India's civil services examination.
Right.
And understanding global affairs is a key part of that.
Hmm.
So this shift in Bangladesh's alliances is something they definitely need to keep on their radar.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the economics either.
Right.
The military dimension to this partnership is equally, if not more, intriguing.
Let's get into that because our sources reveal something pretty remarkable.
Okay.
A military training agreement between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Now, considering their history, this is a huge development.
It really is a landmark moment. After a long and complicated past,
Right.
these two nations are now open to military cooperation.
Wow.
The agreement involves Pakistani military personnel actually conducting training in Bangladesh, which
Whoa.
speaks volumes about, the thawing relations between them.
And when you add Turkey into the mix, it starts to look a lot like a potential trilateral alliance.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah.
Individually, Bangladesh is seeking those closer ties with both Pakistan and Turkey.
Right.
But you look at the bigger picture, and there's a common thread.
Mm-hmm.
All three nations have reason to be cautious of India's regional dominance.
So they're kind of, finding strength in numbers, so to speak.
Precisely, and this is where things get really interesting from a defense perspective.
Okay.
Turkey already has a significant footprint in Bangladesh's military,
Mm-hmm.
supplying a range of equipment.
We're talking Otokar Cobra, armored vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
TRG missile systems.
Yes.
But the one that's really grabbing the headlines is the Bayraktar TB2 drone.
Right. That drone has become a bit of a celebrity in the world of military tech,
Mm-hmm.
proving its effectiveness in several recent conflicts.
And I'm sure everyone remembers The incident where a Turkish drone was spotted near the Indian border,
Yeah.
I mean, that raised some eyebrows in New Delhi, to say the
Like,
least.
there were even calls to shoot it down.
Well,
It was a stark reminder of the real-world tensions these developments are creating.
so we've got this budding alliance,
Hmm.
this high-tech weaponry flowing in, a clear message being sent to the region.
Yeah,
It's a bold move by Bangladesh,
it is.
but they're not stopping there.
No.
They're also in the market for new fighter jets.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to have their sights set on some pretty impressive options.
Yes.
We're talking about the French Rafale and the Eurofighter Typhoon,
Mm-hmm.
both top-of-the-line aircraft.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. There's speculation that Bangladesh might favor the Eurofighter over the Rafale.
And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
India already operates the Rafale.
Ah, I see.
Choosing the Eurofighter shows that Bangladesh is very deliberately diversifying their defense portfolio.
Interesting.
They're clearly thinking strategically, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
It's a classic power play, right? Reduce reliance on one major power by forging ties with others. So what does all of this mean for the future of South Asia?
Right, that's the big question.
That is the big question.
Yes.
We'll be back to unpack that in part 2.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. You know, before we kind of jumped into the military side of things, we were talking about Bangladesh's push to expand economic ties with Turkey.
Right.
And it goes beyond just diversifying trade partners.
Yeah.
It seems like a calculated move to reshape their economic landscape.
It's interesting because, on the surface, diversifying trade partners seems like a pretty standard economic strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing the history of the region and India's long-standing influence, it takes on a whole new meaning.
Exactly. Remember that canceled high-level judicial visit between Bangladesh and India.
Oh, yeah?
That wasn't just, a scheduling conflict. It was a very public display of strained relations.
Wow.
And for a long time, Bangladesh has been seen as being within India's sphere of influence, both economically and politically. So by reaching out to Turkey, Bangladesh is signaling a desire to break free from that mold.
Yeah, like they're saying, we're not just India's little brother anymore.
Exactly.
We're a major player. We're going to chart our own course.
Precisely. And this potential bloc with Turkey and Pakistan gives Bangladesh leverage,
Right.
allowing them to counterbalance India's influence and step onto the regional stage with a lot more confidence.
It's fascinating how these seemingly isolated events, like a canceled visit or a new trade deal, can actually be pieces of a much larger geopolitical puzzle.
It's like a game of chess where every single move has consequences and ripple effects across the board.
Right.
And the stakes are high.
Yeah.
The balance of power in South Asia is a delicate thing.
So let's talk about those ripple effects.
Mm.
What are the potential consequences of this new alignment? Is this just a temporary blip, or could it really reshape the regional order?
It's too early to say, for sure.
Okay.
But a few things are worth watching closely.
Right.
First, how will India react? They're not going to sit back and passively watch their influence diminish.
Right. So we could see, diplomatic pressure, economic incentives, maybe even increased military activity in the region.
It's certainly possible. Another key point to watch is how this potential bloc, if it solidifies, impacts regional security.
Okay.
Will it lead to greater stability?
Right.
Or will it actually exacerbate existing tensions and maybe even spark new conflicts?
This is sobering thought, but I suppose uncertainty and the risk of escalation kind of come with the territory in geopolitics, right?
Unfortunately, yes. And we can't overlook the economic implications either.
Okay.
Increased trade between Bangladesh, Turkey, and Pakistan could create new opportunities and reshape regional trade patterns.
So there's potential upside too, not just risks and tension.
Absolutely. Every geopolitical shift has an economic dimension to it.
Right.
It's not just about military might. It's also about securing resources, markets, and investments.
This is getting complex, so many moving parts, so many potential outcomes.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process, even for those of us who follow this stuff closely.
But that's what makes it so captivating.
Right.
It's a real-time illustration of how the world is constantly changing. Seemingly small events can have massive repercussions.
Okay, so for all our listeners out there, from seasoned analysts to folks just starting to explore the world of geopolitics, what's the key takeaway here? What should they be focusing on as this situation develops?
The key is understanding that this is a fluid situation with the potential to significantly alter the geopolitical landscape of South Asia.
Okay.
Pay close attention to the actions and reactions of all the key players: Bangladesh, India, Turkey, and Pakistan.
Right. It's important not to forget about what some might call the little guy in all this.
Right. The little guy who also happens to be the 8th most populous country in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bangladesh is making some bold moves, and they're not going to be ignored.
No.
This story's just starting to unfold, and it's one you won't want to miss. And for our listeners preparing for those UPSC exams,
Right.
this is a perfect example of how seemingly regional events can have global implications.
It's a reminder that the world is interconnected.
Yeah.
And understanding these complex dynamics is crucial for anyone interested in international affairs, whether for exams or simply to stay informed.
We'll be back with part 3 to delve even deeper into the potential implications of this emerging geopolitical puzzle.
Don't go anywhere.
All right, we are back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into this, fascinating power play happening in South Asia. We've covered a lot of ground here, from Bangladesh's outreach to Turkey and Pakistan, the potential implications for the region, and, of course, India's likely response.
Yes, it is a complex situation with a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
But before we, get into the possible outcomes, let's bring it back to our listeners. The folks who are following these developments closely, maybe even those prepping for those UPSC exams in India. What's the so what factor here?
Yeah, why should they care about this whole Bangladesh, Turkey, Pakistan triangle?
Exactly. It's easy to get, lost in the details of troop movements, trade deals, diplomatic maneuvering. But what does it all really mean?
Right. What's the bigger picture here?
Here's why this matters. This situation is like a prime example of how fluid international relations can be.
All right.
Alliances can shift so rapidly,
right?
And the global balance of power is constantly in flux.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests.
You got it. And understanding those interests is absolutely crucial to deciphering the moves and countermoves of nations on the world stage.
So in this case, what are Bangladesh's interests? I mean, what are they hoping to achieve with this apparent new direction in their foreign policy?
From what we can gather, it seems that Bangladesh is aiming for greater strategic autonomy.
Okay.
They want to, reduce their dependence on India and establish themselves as a truly independent player in the region.
Makes sense. No country wants to be entirely reliant on another, especially when it comes to something as crucial as defense.
Right. And for Bangladesh, this means diversifying their sources of military equipment, forging those new economic partnerships, and building relationships with countries that share their concerns about India's regional dominance.
And that's where Turkey and Pakistan come in. They both have their own reasons for maybe preferring a less dominant India in South Asia.
Precisely. So there's a definite convergence of interests here, driving this new alignment.
But as we discussed earlier, this new alignment also comes with its share of risks.
Yes.
Could escalate tensions with India, destabilize the region, potentially even lead to conflict?
Those risks are certainly real.
Yeah.
And it's, important not to downplay them. But it's also important to remember that international relations is all about managing those risks.
Right.
Finding ways to cooperate even when there are disagreements. It's a delicate balancing act.
So what's the bottom line here? What's the big takeaway our listeners should walk away with?
Well, the key takeaway is this. We are potentially witnessing a significant realignment in South Asia.
Okay.
One that could have, far-reaching consequences for the region and even beyond. And how this plays out will depend on a complex interplay of factors.
Right.
Including the actions of, all the major players, the response of the international community, and let's be honest, a little bit of unpredictable geopolitical luck.
It's almost like a high-stakes poker game where the cards are still being dealt. We can analyze the hands, try to predict the moves.
Right.
But ultimately, the outcome remains uncertain.
That's a great analogy. And that uncertainty is what makes it all so fascinating to follow.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, from the seasoned South Asia experts to those just starting to explore the complexities of geopolitics, keep your eyes on this one.
Yes.
This story is far from over, and it has the potential to, reshape the map in a big way.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to accurately predict how it all unfolds.
That's right. And in the meantime, keep those brains buzzing. stay curious, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating world of global affairs.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
And most importantly, never stop learning. See you on the next deep dive.